Hi, it is Thursday, May 22nd. I call the meeting of the Library Board of Trustees to order. Julia, could you please give a roll call and explain to the public how they might participate?
So, do we have a trustee Petty here?
Here, present.
Yes, awesome. Trustee Joshi?
Here.
Perfect. We have trustee Lori May. Oh, words today. All right, we have trustee Silveria.
Present.
Awesome. Trustee Morrow.
Here.
Awesome. That is everybody. We have our wonderful director here as well. And I think our assistant director for the first time.
Yes.
Yes, she is joining us. If anybody in the public would like to participate, let me just find the link here. They can call in. Here's the link. All right, so you can, let's see if it gives me a phone number. Looks like you can just join in on our website. If you do join in, please raise your hand for any comments. Yes. Now.
Thank you.
All right, I think that is everything for now.
Our first item is to receive an update on the assistant library director. We're very pleased to see the assistant library director.
Recording in progress.
No, it was so delayed. I clicked that at the beginning.
Okay.
All right.
All right, welcome. All trustees are present. I'll just start off and hand it over. But just background in, it's been, I believe, 13 plus years since we've had an assistant library director here, Monterey Public Library. At that point, there was a library director that became the community services director for a period of time, and the board at that time petitioned to have the library director back as a full-time library director. And the assistant library director retired. I believe that position is going away for a period of time. So in the beginning of the fiscal year 2020, beginning of the fiscal year 2025 budget,
That's what happens.
we added the position to the position control list for the city in the budget, and that also meant that we had to create a new job position, a new job spec, because the position has been vacant so long, it was no longer on the books, and the salary schedule. So that took quite a bit of time. And then we opened the recruitment, and once we welcomed Melissa McKenna, we asked to join the library here, and Melissa joined just last week as of May 16th.
Yes.
So Melissa, I'll turn it over to you, Jen.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much. I'm very excited to be here. This was one of my little big dates I had on my calendar, was to meet you all. But yeah, so I came here from the Monterey County Free Libraries. So I was the branch manager of the Marina Library for the last 6 years, and I loved that library. It was a very vibrant library, but it was a really good opportunity, and I wanted to make sure that I, pursue something. I live in Monterey, so I'm also a resident here. And I've been using this library. I used it a lot when I first moved out here in Kern County. So yeah, thank you so much for having me, and I'm excited to meet you all and work with you all as well.
With that, if we could have the trustees, if you can introduce yourselves for Melissa as well, and maybe if there's anything reserved, you're serving on the board, what got you to your interest here in joining on the board of library trustees. Anything regarding career or path, but something that got you interested in here, love to have anything. Sure. I don't know if we want to start at the end here, trustee Petty.
Hi, Melissa. How long did you say you were at the Marina Library?
For 6 years.
6 years, okay. Because back when I was running the county Medicare advising program, I gave a lot of talks in that wonderful meeting room you have there. But you weren't there then, I don't think.
I don't think so,
Yeah.
no.
Anyhow, I've been on this board, I don't know, something like around 10 years. And prior to that, I was on the Historic Preservation Commission for the city for also about 10 years. And prior to that, and overlapping with the HPC a bit, I volunteered with the police department in the Citizens Patrol and walked a beat, starting at the police station all the way down to the aquarium with a partner every week. And, you know, it was more public relations than anything else. Although there was one time when we assisted in the capture of somebody who was trying to sell drugs down near Custom House Plaza.
Okay.
But, you know, we weren't sworn, we didn't have weapons or anything like that, but we did assist with the capture of that person. I tailed them. So when the cops got to the scene, I could say, you went around there or something like that. But then I was on the HPC for a long time, just because the historic qualities of the city of Monterey interested me so much, and I was chair of that commission several times. And then when a position came up here at the library, and I've been an educator, university professor, and so education and libraries and everything are something I've been involved with for many, many years, even before living in Monterey. And so when a position here on the board came up, I applied and have been chair a few times, and I'm still kicking around, but I've been on here long enough. I was gonna ask you, where are you gonna get a desk in this building? The reason I asked that is because Brian's office used to be the office of the assistant director.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, Doug had that office.
No, Doug has the office that Dennis had been in.
And who?
Dennis Copeland was manager.
I know Douglas was in the office, and then, who am I blanking on?
Kimberly Burton,
No, after her,
Inga.
Inga moved in there when she became director. But I know Doug was in there for a while.
Yeah, I don't need an office that big.
You don't need an office, all right, well.
I do have an office.
She has the fund development office.
Yeah.
Oh.
Going just a little
Perfect.
farther down, all right,
It's
well,
perfect, good size, fire trucks.
whatever.
Oh, yeah.
Welcome, 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 and be sure to hit on us if we can be of any help.
Of course, thank you so much, Bob, thank you.
Me?
Sure.
My name is Harish Joshi. One of the first things I did after moving to Monterey was walk down here and get a membership card. And looked around, it seemed like a nice place. Got involved in it. I joined the Friends and Foundation, which is where I met Diane. And got involved in the chocolate and wine fundraiser. And then also became a member of the 1849 Society.
Yeah.
And we used to have get-togethers from which I got to know the mayor then. And when the position opened up, I talked to him about that, and he appointed me there, so there I am.
Awesome, thank you so much, thank you.
Well, I'm Diane. I started volunteering here, shelving books and working in the collections when I retired about 10 years ago. And then from there, I got involved with the Friends and Foundation, and then threw in big during the pandemic with both those ventures, with the volunteering and Friends and Foundation, because I had a lot of time. This was a safe place to be, and the layoffs were so extreme that they needed a lot of volunteers and a lot of money. So, but I've always been a chronic volunteer. So, so this is just the natural next step.
You're everywhere.
Yeah, yeah, I saw her shelving this morning. So.
I'm Jamie Bernard Silvera. I've been on the board for 3 years. First as a learner, and then I was vice chair, and now I'm chair. That's the way it works around here. You share the leadership responsibilities. I'm actually a retired librarian. Started out in public libraries in Daly City Public Library, then moved down here, and I was coordinating at MOBAC, which, you know what MOBAC is. Anyway, they were much more active at the time. They did all kinds of trainings and second level reference and database provision and things like that. And now PLP, that you experienced on Friday, is really in charge of most of those things. There's still delivery, right, Brian, and a couple other things. But anyway, So I did that for 13 years, and then 1990, I totally changed my life. I got married, I got pregnant with twins, and, and I changed to being an academic librarian. I was at the San Jose State Monterey County campus, which existed in Salinas for about 5 years. And it was created to give Monterey County residents a chance to finish their 4-year degrees, because you could go to community college, but then after that, there wasn't much option for getting a BA or BS. So that was a fun job. And it was nice because at our graduation, a lot of the students were first generation college students, and their families came and were all excited, and they would speak in English and then in Spanish to the family. So it was a really good opportunity to provide that kind of service. But then in 1995, an even more audacious opportunity came around with the opening of CSU Monterey Bay. So I was given a choice. You want to go to the main campus of San Jose State and work there, or you want to go to this new university with a new library, without a library really at that time.
Yeah.
And that's where I met Marcia. We were in the early days. We were out in the, the cubicles and the boonies. But so I've been retired though for 10 years, and I didn't do much in the pandemic, but I did start doing some volunteering. And then my neighbor down the street, also a retired librarian, said, well, there's an opening on the library board, you should apply. So I did, and here I am. And Marcia.
Yes, I used to live in Marina actually, because I was a founding faculty at CSU Monterey Bay. I lived on the campus there.
Okay.
And I came from New York to do that.
Oh, wow.
And then I became the dean of the College of Science there, which I did for 18 years, and then retired. But I've always loved libraries. So I'm on the board of this one and on the board of the one at CSU Monterey Bay as well. And I just see this place as a hub of the community. I always have. When I moved here, I brought my kids down and we said, oh, we'll get library cards. And they said, oh, you live in Marina, $25 a person for a library card. Remember that? So we said, no, thank you, we'll go to Marina. Which was in a storefront at the time.
Yeah,
It was a really tiny little place. But this is really a wonderful place, and I welcome the opportunity to try to make it an even better place. Working with all these folks. So, is it okay if we ask her a question? So what do you think is the most pressing thing that you'll start working on?
Wow. Well, there's a lot going on. Brian, I've been learning a ton from Brian already, just all the projects that are going on. But yeah, I mean, I definitely can see that there is this sort of real need to kind of bridge a lot of the different projects that are happening with library staff, especially like how do we bridge the libraries with the museums, because it's kind of becoming, it's obviously all under one. Brian's kind of doing spearheading a lot of that. So yeah, that's something that I can see where I can fit in, is to help kind of bridge that connection between museums and library staff. So yeah, that's I would say that's immediate, but I'm on day 4, so I don't want to speak too much. But yeah, I mean, I definitely have been talking to Brian about a lot of the facility kind of work that he's been doing, even just with like kind of the branding of like the library with the art. So that's I think something. I mean, that's something that I definitely noticed as a resident before I worked. Before I even thought about working for the library. That's something that was pretty evident to me that it was happening. Like there was sort of this like nice little revival of like, this pride of history and having some ownership for that. So yeah, I would say combining some of that and and just learning a bit more where I can be of best support.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Anybody else? Do you have any more questions for us?
I don't, nah, I'm okay right now. Yeah.
All right.
And thank you. You all gave me really good little brief little background, so thank you. Thank you. I'm sure I'll have more questions as we get to know each other, so.
Are there any questions?
There are no questions or comments.
Oh, okay.
No attendees so far.
All right, so let's move on to the consent agenda, which consists of quite a lot this time. Does anybody want to make a motion to,
Chair, can I add one comment? It'll be on item number 6. I can make a
okay,
item number 6 for the second reading, if I can make a comment on that. For just a text change.
oh, okay,
Yeah, and I would just want to make one comment on the minutes as well.
okay. Okay,
And I would like to pull item 3 from the consent agenda so that we can ask some questions and discuss. And so I don't mean to discuss and then put it back in, because that's not the way it works. But we pull it out
all
and
right,
you have a choice of whether we discuss it immediately or wherever you put it in the whole agenda, but it's not. So now I'm reducing the 5-item consent agenda to 4 by pulling number 3 out.
So if we want to make any changes and we want to vote on number 6, do they get pulled also from the consent calendar?
I would-
We have Vote on something.
Well, yeah, because we want to just discuss. I think it's just.
This is a vote,
This is a vote.
so
Yes.
we have to take that out.
Right, but then we'll vote on it. We vote on it. We pull it off, but then we vote back on
okay. So does anybody have a motion to approve the 4 items that are still on the consent agenda?
Yeah, sure, I'll move.
As amended after discussed.
You and Brian wanted to say something about one or both of the, a couple items, right?
Okay,
And,
So we do that before.
Well,
we approve.
well, we have to have a motion first.
So,
And
okay,
then
so moved.
Okay, all right. So now we can have some discussion under,
Number 2.
number 2. Number 2, all the minutes, yes.
Yeah, under trustee comments, I don't know what I've said, I don't remember, but it certainly wasn't what's on here, so I would like
Oh,
you
okay.
to. I would just remove the trustee comment that says Moreau commented, because it doesn't make any sense, and I don't think I said that,
it. All right.
unless I was drunk.
Yeah, that didn't ring any bells with me
Okay.
either.
Okay. Oh, more checkouts and less removed?
Yeah, I don't know what it means, and I didn't say, it.
All right.
I don't know what I did say.
It might, yeah, I'm not sure. It was, might have been something about. I would suggest because we went to auto renewals. or
Something, I don't know what it
It
is.
doesn't make, yeah, it could be strength.
Take it off.
That's right.
Okay,
All right.
make a note of that. Thank you.
So,
And
And so for item number 6, do we need to discuss that now or later?
Trustee Petty, did you want me to go over the item for?
I
for-
wasn't sure your motivation for doing something with item 6.
Mine was just, it was a technical change, and that's on page 19 of it, and that's to be
Is it
consistent.
just like a word change or something like
It's a
that?
number change, so it's.
Number.
Yeah, if you're just doing that, then it's just a correction of what's there. And with that correction, then we could vote to accept the whole consent agenda, except for the one that I pulled.
Right, and so I just wanted to clarify on that, which is that, and this would be to, after advising and talking with David here, talking with Pacific Grove, that the sentence, library materials that are not returned within, it would be 49 days after due date will be rebuilt as reflected in library policy 125. And so that's be consistent with what is current practice. So that's the current practice in terms of where our notifications and our current practice of billing goes forward, and that'd be consistent with.
What did it say, 30-some before I?
It's at 35.
Yeah.
And so it goes to 49 because then that's a consistent practice with Pacific Grove and what we currently do. So it's just to keep, that's a technical.
All right.
And I was curious, clerically, if charging them and then reversing it when they return it is charging them is really just to get their attention, right? Thinking that you will
Right.
mostly be reversing those charges.
Right, and that's the
Is
policy.
that administratively a hassle?
No, I mean, the billing automatically goes through. We then have to pull it back when somebody comes in.
Okay,
You know, the billing like, that's the thing about being 49 days, because then the computer will automatically bill it.
okay, so it isn't, yeah, it doesn't take a personnel
Exactly.
lift, okay.
Marcia, the thing in the last month's meeting, minutes that I had to scroll through to find it here. Are you talking about the sentence that says Moreau commented
Yes,
that she would like to see more checkouts and less renewals?
yes, she didn't say
Well,
that.
other than the grammar's wrong, sounded just like you to me.
I beg your.
It'd be fewer renewals, wouldn't it? On your
No, but
recommendations?
that doesn't make any sense. Why would I wanna, I mean, why would I wanna see fewer renewals? I mean,
Would
I
use
don't-
up your comment that way.
It doesn't make any sense.
We'll just
I
strike
don't know
it.
what
Well,
else.
we don't have to listen to the.
Yeah, I'm
Let's
just
just
You're just
strike
gonna
it.
strike that sentence.
Okay, so we have everything covered except for item 3, which is full, and we will discuss it in a minute. So do we have a vote? Do we need to have a roll call? No. We can just do,
With Zoom meetings you do, and this is a
Okay.
Zoom meeting, even though we're all here.
That's if people are attending via Zoom. Right. And not if we're doing, it's a roll.
But it's potentially somebody's here by Zoom, right?
Potentially, we have had no one join
Oh,
so far.
okay.
But
The
we're also
moment
voting
someone
on
joins
policies.
in, I'll let you guys know.
Yeah, we have to.
We're voting on policies, right?
all right,
Yeah.
yes, okay. So, let's do roll call then.
All right, we have trustee Petty,
Approved.
all right, trustee Joshi,
Approved.
all right, trustee Delorme,
Approved?
all right, trustee Silverio,
Aye. Yes,
trustee Morrow,
Approved.
okay.
all right. Okay, so Bob, do you want to address
Sure.
what you would like to talk about the,
Yeah, there were a number of things there that, after I read them, I just realized I was clueless. You said the city had an all-staff, meaning everybody that works for the city, meeting with an employee engagement recognition, or somebody named Dr. Nelson. I don't know who he is or what the meeting was all about, I'm just curious. So very, very briefly.
Yeah, I think Kim and I attended that, and it was a training he's done just about, and it seems like something he's done for the past 10 or 15 years, multiple times, so it's a lot of older content, but he's written things like management for dummies, and he's written things about just in management, and a South African kind of term of, what did you call it again? Ubuntu?
Yeah,
Ubuntu.
he writes books on leadership and management, so he has a number of published books, and then he does speaking engagements.
So the city engaged him to.
The city hired him to come talk to
Yeah,
us.
city hired them, and then city manager's office asked that all staff attend the meeting.
One of the other things I was wondering about is, a little bit farther down that same page in our packet, you talked about proposals for the budget at a special session. And the departments were asked to reduce accounts by 7%. And then is it also true that therefore, when you made the library's proposal, you excluded money for new staff? Because that would be, as a way of keeping the 7 down, or how did that work with asking for fewer staff? Sure. And reducing the request by 7%.
So I will say the 7% is more on line items that are like supplies, contract services, other things that were not library staff, that were not staff related. So that wasn't the 7%. So, but this was the original proposal that I discussed with the board at an earlier meeting and brought forward, and that asked about additional part-time seasonal staff to help open the 6 to 8 p.m. and then move our library assistant from regular part-time to full-time to assist with those hours. That was on my initial proposal to the city manager and the budget prior to this ask. So what happened is we went through, all the departments met with the city management and the finance team. And I proposed a package of different amounts. They then came back after that meeting and said, there's no additional staffing. They're not gonna get additional staffing to increase the Monday evening hours. They're not going to support that. And we need either revenue or expenditures decreased by 7% or revenues by 7%. So to get these numbers. So there were specific numbers that came in. I mean, it was originally, essentially, I think, somewhere in the nature, look back at it, it's not a huge number of those specific accounts.
But in order to increase the Monday hours, we absolutely had to increase staff? Or were they saying, sure, we'll pay to increase the hours, like additional electricity or something, but we won't pay for more staff?
No, there wasn't any piece, because I mean, we have the
two are like Siamese twins. You can't do one without the other. You can't open more hours without definitely adding more staff.
Right, exactly. And so that was the piece where I said the primary cost for it is the staff, because what we budgeted for electrical, because we've done some different LED upgrades and things like that, that electricity rates have actually gone down slightly. So we can absorb what we've cost in the PG&E, but really the direct cost is I need people that work the desk and shelf books from 6 to 8 p.m. So that's where I was saying, like, this is the specific cost for that. And with that, I mean, you're looking at moving from the regular part-time to full-time. There's a benefits cost. There's some of that cost that adds in there, including the salary benefits costs and hourly employee costs.
And the very next paragraph, you apparently had a meeting with Pat and a chief building official, whoever that person is, and you discussed which, I assume, library projects had been completed, were duplicated, or were not feasible. So which ones were eliminated because they're not feasible? So, because we've talked about all the different things.
Yeah, so in the December, I'll talk about it later at the kind of the facility report, but there is an ADA report that was brought it's on the council agenda from December, and it goes line item by line item for over $400,000 worth of work. But there's some items here, for example, main entrance at Pacific Street, $4,480 worth of work, but we had that, the sidewalk was repaired. So the sidewalk has been redone at Pacific Street. So that has been, the sidewalk was replaced after the time of the report. So that doesn't cost. The bookmobile, there was a step for $450. We have a new bookmobile. There's a drinking fountain where they say the drinking fountain off to the side is not compliant because it's what's called wing arms. That goes that was around $8,000. Some different work services for catalogs. We have new approved funding from the Friends and Foundation for tables for furniture. So some of those things where they have allocated funding for that. There are things where they felt the solarium needed a full accessible hearing loop installed for that. And we looked at the code to look at a portable system for a hearing loop because of the size. They quoted the cost at $15,000 to do a hearing loop for the solarium, which the solarium fits 12 people. So it's not the same size, it's not the same cost as doing this. One of the largest costs on there was what's called a guy wire, which is a PG&E wire. It's not a city wire, but it's if you're at the pole on Pacific Street, right at the entryway on Pacific, there's a guy wire is basically the secure wire that when you're walking down the sidewalk and you see that wire is holding onto the post, and that was $126,000. So is that a PG&E responsibility or the city's responsibility for something like that? So those were ones where we pulled it, and then some of these things were also, for example, the elevator. So the elevator quoted in the 88 project, the dimension, to change the dimension of the elevator, 17,000. That's not true because you can't expand the width of an elevator inside of a tube, right? Like the tube is a certain size, so you can't expand that out, but they had put in there just as a formula that it's going to cost $17,536. So it's basically looking at that and saying you keep on the numbers, for example, the elevator that says audible accessibility, like you can improve certain types of accessibility, you can make it say like level 1, level 2, you can change the panels.
Yeah,
But the car width is not something that's feasible. So that's really, we went through, Lori Lynn Williamson is the chief building official for the city. And so we went through every step of that, whatever, 100-page report and just said, we think this is, and I could be off, you know, we could be off, but it was really like looking at everything and saying, we think this has been done, or we don't think this is feasible with the facility, with the current construction.
so not feasible does not necessarily mean, we don't like the idea, we don't want to do it. Because some of this was ADA.
Right. And ADA is basically moving what your building code is. So I mean, like, if you have historic buildings and everything like that, you can never make a historic building 100%
Yeah, I
up to building code. So the thing is that certain buildings, because this building is, anything that's new is gonna be built to new building code. But this is an existing building, so we're trying to get as much as possible to current building codes. But that goes into things like, if you look at the second floor ceiling, which is low, right? Those kind of pieces like that help, like, would they build a certain P2 building codes now? And the elevator would be built at a different spec today versus being built in 1983. So that's where it's the reasonableness of some of those things are, and the feasibility. Can you actually do it within the footprint of what you have?
Yeah, and sometimes, and I don't know if it's the city or not, but sometimes if you remodel one part of your house, they inspect the whole rest of the house. Even though it's at the far other end of the building.
Yeah.
And it has nothing to do with what you were remodeling. They look at it anyway, and you have to bring things up to current code, even if you weren't trying to remodel that piece of your house.
Yeah.
I mean, I know we went through that, so, that's why I was curious. So, those are the things that I didn't know the answers to, so why I wanted to ask.
I have a question. Does this piece also refer to the list of things that need to be done essentially right away? There were, you know, several $1,000s worth of things that.
So you could do it.
Yeah, that,
So-
well, I mean, Hans said that, but that's before the current budget, where we're at right now, and where the funding is, and where they're looking at, because they've got a lot of meetings regarding capital needs, and that's been on their past couple agendas. I'm not sure where they're funding, even if that was what he said at one point, we need to make sure we have those allocations.
Right.
But I would say, I did go through the facility condition assessment list also with, Jason Bradley, who is from our Public Works, department, and I raised a couple of different questions on there, and then we clarified, so there were things, and I'll talk about some of that in terms of the advocacy and NCIP proposals, because there were things that I looked at, which were essentially like where it said things, one was like a switchboard, which was listed twice, and it was $100,000, right? There was another thing that was like LED lighting, and we've been working on it, so it says 220, but it's kind of 204. So there's certain things where it's like we've dropped down specifics, and I was going through, like, okay, we've got a new pump in the boiler room, and it still didn't, I mean, it didn't change, what did it change it from? I mean, it went down to basically on that list, it's at still at $4.5 million, but it's, you know, a couple $100,000 less. But it's still, that facility condition assessment, that's the full facility.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I had one more question, and that was, about the Herald's, photograph archives. Two questions. One is that up for, I mean, you said your, library's interested in acquiring it. Are they giving it up?
Well, so the thought is that, this is something which I've been trying to get in touch with, get a meeting with Jackie Gralla and Jordan Leininger there. So, talking with the editor Kellogg, David Kellogg from the Herald, when they left that building, the UCOR building up there in Ryan Ranch area, they left all of their archives. with the handshake deal, that those were still theirs. And they
The
still,
Herald is, they're still going to the Herald.
they still belong to the Herald, and they're up there in the facility. And so I'm inquired about, there are essentially 50 years of, there's items that are in their boiler room. They have a boiler room that has stacks of negatives from the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, of photo negatives, which is a terrible place.
They're being boiled?
Yeah, and so they also have an archive room that has files, but these are basically, to think about it, it's like they might do a photo shoot and the editor says to a photographer, go out to the 4th of July parade. And it says 4th of July parade, and then they'll have one negative that has the photo that was placed on the newspaper, and then all the sleeves of negatives that the photographer submitted. And so it's a fantastic archive of really Monterey Peninsula history. And then in the printing room, I don't know if you've been in that whole building, but there's where the actual printing press used to be for the newspapers. They have large filing cabinets full of, they have their own clipping files, and they also have their own print files of photos. So there's print files of photos. And so my concern is that, number one, like the storage, the one room, which is the archive room, is great, and it's in there, and it has also the bound copies of the newspaper. We have the agreement right now with the Herald to be the host of all of the digital content for the newspaper. So because of that, the Herald, people, when they ask for Herald archives, they contact the library. People contact the library and say, I want a newspaper, and they've asked us for photos, but we don't have the photos. And so my interest is that, is there a way for us to make sure that those items don't deteriorate, and that we don't lose that history from late 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, up to 2002.
And is the MC Gives project to digitize archives, can that cover these as well?
I mean, it possibly could, but that would be a massive,
Right.
I think what the ideal spot would be for funding like that would be to work on getting that collection into a secure, like a place that we can identify, whether that's in the basement downstairs where we have we call Archives 2 here, and getting some of the IT equipment out and getting more storage for that. So we have a secure
And climate
space.
control.
And climate control, yeah. And because I want to make sure that those items, and so that the talk is that myself, the Herald, and CCOB need to get together and say, what is the future of these photos? Because this is a huge archive of our history, because if you think about like our local history for us really goes up to a certain period. It goes up quite a bit to the 1950s, around that time, for a lot of stuff. And we're getting to a stage right now where people's history from the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, early 2000s, before digital cameras and before a lot of the website content, there's a big gap. And I find that that's to me, that is a goal where it's like people talk about the Hathaway collection. And we have a lot of the same stuff as the Hathaway collection. To me, this is a gold mine of history for this peninsula, and we have to preserve it. And the Herald is now owned by a national company. And so we would be able to, if we can absorb this, we would make sure that we can preserve it for legacy. So that's my goal.
And the Herald is, I mean, it seems like CSUB isn't really part of this discussion as much as the Herald is, because the Herald is the one that owns them.
No, because it was a handshake deal, they're sitting there, so I'm not sure
Right.
that's piece. And so I've walked through with the editor and tried to make some roadway in terms of contacting with the CSUB about what exactly do you need, and what is it that they're interested in, what are we interested in, and how do we do it? Because in the end, I really want to find a way that protects these photos, protects this information, but also how do we share it with the public in the future? If one of us has it, but it's just really, I would hate for this stuff to get lost.
Yeah,
Or deteriorate.
And from what I'm aware of is, because I'd asked old reporters from the Herald, how do we find some, because a lot of people have thought when they moved out, they used to be at where East Village, where the Washington Hotel is, East Village Cafe, that's the old Herald building. When they moved out of there, a lot of stuff pre-1950s, a lot of that stuff has gone. So a lot of the early Herald photos, negatives, like a lot of the stuff just got dumped out years, if the photographer or artist didn't save themselves or writers. But that's where just like, as buildings change and people move in, and then you see filing cabinets inside of a boiler room, and if somebody were to go in there or in a dark room in the middle of a storage area, and it's full of, like, I was in there and I found photos I'd never seen about the building of this library. They were brand new. There was photos of them, people moving boxes from the Van Buren Library to here. The building was brand new. So it's the first, or not first, but Christmas tree lightings at Colton Hall. Like it's got, there's photos, and I was trying to find other photos for the purpose of, like, for example, we got a call from somebody from wanting a photo from a newspaper. We found the article, and it's regarding a super rare car from Pebble Beach. Now, we don't have the rights to that photo because it's done from by the photographer from Pebble Beach Company. So that's all things we'll have to work out.
Let me just add, this makes it hit me, possibly the best movie I've ever seen in decades of life, is called Shooting the Past. And it's hard to find, but if you can, find Shooting the Past. And it's about Timothy Small, the English actor, is the curator, or you might say librarian, but it's like of a library of photos. And of course, since he's created them, you can't just walk up there and look at a card catalog and find the photo. And if you ask a question, he'll go to one photo and find one little piece in that photo, and then he'll find another photo with that same person, but that adds another piece to the, and through the research, like maybe steps move, he'll find the answer, and it's just a fantastic movie. Shooting the Past. In that vein, I almost forgot to ask, have the staff received their revised name badges?
Oh, so,
I can, oh, okay.
yeah,
And do we get them too?
we can make them for you too, yeah. So we have,
Because the two I have at home already, one of them is white, that's why.
That's
I-
the one.
so,
Yeah,
so we
that
had,
one.
so we had the ones I had printed.
Clearer than that.
Yeah, so basically the ones that I had printed and made for you guys, when I received all of them, I realized they used an ink on the outside that rubs off, so people that put them on their purse, in their pocket,
Oh,
and the ink wears off. So these ones, what we did is about a two-layer plastic, and just redesigned it, and then asked David to use the X tool, which is our engraver, we just engraved them here in the library.
so if the ink isn't smeared on my white one, I'm okay.
It's okay, yeah, we can always.
Or I can wear my old one.
Or you
Thank
can
you.
just keep collecting them.
Well, yeah, sure, give me one where I won't get ink all over.
Well, we don't want to make too much more work for the library staff.
No,
Oh, we could, offer them in colors.
okay.
Okay, thank you for discussing item 3.
Yeah, I think we still have to vote on that one item to approve. No, we don't.
It's not part of the consent agenda anymore, and it was just to accept the report.
Okay.
It said, I thought,
All right.
Item 6 is a policy change.
No, we voted on that.
Okay. So we don't have to vote on the receiving the report. All right. So move along
because
now.
we did.
We're moving in the period of general public comments. Are there any members of the public?
There is nobody here.
Okay. All right, moving on to item number 7, which Brian alluded to, is receiving an update on library advocacy and also discuss NCIP facility proposal.
Can I pass these down, for trustees, grab one and pass one down? Kim and Melissa? These are just some estimates that I put together, so I'll talk first, basically, thank you to trustee Delormier and trustee Moreau, who met with us downtown, and I realized I misspelled neighborhood. sorry. They were representatives of the NCIP committee for looking at potential projects at the library. And they had stated that they're looking at fewer projects possibly that are larger. So they wanted some larger projects which had some direct input. So like less number of projects, but something that is maybe within the $500,000 to $750,000 range proposed. And so we talked briefly on a couple of things I wasn't able to say the whole time, but we talked about some of the looking at ADA compliance, restroom and water fountain upgrades, California history room facility upgrades, battery backup instead of a generator for emergency community resilience centers. So a couple of different items that we had thought of. So I just put in here just in kind of the text what the directive of the board policy 601 is, you know, which gives the board the authority to represent, come on when we have approved kind of roles, and with one of those is working on board advocacy. So I hope this fits in with that. But I shared this document with everybody. Has everybody got a copy? Just in terms of, if you look at the bottom of page of the backside, which is where it says the ADA transition plan identified needs. This is from the project, minus some of those projects that Trustee Penny, when you're asking like the things that we said were not feasible or whatnot, this is what was essentially left over currently around 198,160. So I would say if we are to look at part of the proposal to basically identify ADA needs for as part of the project proposal, that we would use this as one of the set numbers, as a 198, 160 out of that 500 to 750.
And none of that is detailed in this.
No, so that's set for that primarily. Those are things like, what I'll say is, for examples are, if you were to look at the stairs right over by the elevator, there are no risers, which is actually a tripping hazard. So there's like a free floating kind of a stair, and actually underneath, which is also a hazard, you have to have something underneath it. There are things like railings coming up and down. There are a lot of those pieces on there. And these are things, as I mentioned, with like the elevator, for example, you want an audible noise that the elevator has arrived. You want things that like on the new panels on the inside. So there's something that says, you can say like, we made reasonable efforts to update this unit as much as we can to current standards. So with that, I put up some different numbers, briefly just on different kind of packages essentially that would look on here. So I just want to put on things, exterior windows and doors. And I feel like also if we do these things, some of these pieces like that, we would want to advocate for the city to do repaint and really make the, you know, just to spruce up the library. Whatever we do on the ADA improvement also should be regarding something that's going to be very visible. And the NCIP mentioned that they would not do paint because it was not a capital
They could
project.
only do capital improvements.
So with that, these interior numbers, you'll see the interior, and I should put this. One of the pieces that I would like to highlight also that I do think we should also fit in there is the dumbwaiter. Kim and I talked about that briefly earlier today because of, it might not be as appealing just to highlight the dumbwaiter, but if we say like dumbwaiter and elevator improvements, right? If you put in both of those, dumbwaiter and elevator, the dumbwaiter, that's the one where we are bringing it, our collection and shelving to the second floor or down into the basement. So that impacts the Friends of Foundation, that impacts the people shelving the books, that impacts the volunteers. And that is, to me, an accessibility issue because if you're having to physically carry books up to the second floor, not everyone can do that. There's the restrooms. I put two different numbers there. And one is the facility condition analysis, which had the restrooms at 65,551. I'm using a number down below, which probably could be adjusted further by a professional. But I'm using a number of $240 a square foot, and that's based on the group 4 renovation estimate. So we could use a different number up there.
So it's the 65,000 or the 92.
92, and I would say, I would always go for the higher, just because with a project like that, but I'm just saying that restrooms, I think would be an ideal one to do also, because there are so many complaints about the restrooms coming in here and the age of them, that would be an ideal project to look at.
Seems like the strategy is to take, cherry pick different ones of these, group them together under maybe some broader title or heading. And so I was thinking safety and health or something like that. And that could include the ADA, it could include the bathrooms and maybe a couple other things. But if you just take the 92, and that's based on the old data. So let's just say it's 100,000, and the other one is, what, 198, so let's say 2. So we got at least maybe 300,000 toward that 500,000 that NCIP mentioned, and you said. So it seems like we want to find things that we can logically group under a single heading, even though they might be in separate things here, and bump that.
Yeah, and so,
Good, I
yeah,
like that.
and so one thing that I was gonna highlight is that if you look at HVAC and plumbing, that's going to far exceed what we're gonna be able to get approved, is my take. If you look at pulling these down, these numbers, you know, for example, air handler in the attic, 534,000, like, that's just a single project, right? And that would knock out the entire amount. So I just wanna highlight, this might be something when we're looking at a larger cost of expansion or bond or whatever that's going to be, and those numbers there were some discussions recently in council about that. So I would say HVAC and plumbing, and the electrical also is $527,000. So two of those, you know, you're looking at around, you know, 2.8, $2.9 million up to 3 is just HVAC, plumbing, electrical, just those systems right there. So that's where that $3 million is gonna be of that amount. So want to highlight on these, I think it's I do, my opinion on some of these things would be, you know, we focus, as you mentioned, on ADA, right? And then you're looking at, you know, roughly 200,000 right there. You look at restrooms, if that's 100, and we can get these narrowed down too. But that's what I mean, like, the facility condition analysis has a 65.5, but I feel like we want to plan for a little higher on those restrooms right there. And then whether some of those entryways of, I do feel like one of the key ones is still the dumbwaiter, and I will say some of the elevator components would be in the ADA plan already, but the dumbwaiter and then also the windows. And the windows, I'm mentioning that because of windows are big on energy costs and heat, you know, controlling your HVAC system. So like we have single pane windows. So these are 106 single pane windows that we currently have throughout the library. And that's a big, if we were to move those into dual pane windows with a UV, like, we get a lot of UV coming in through the sides of the building that impacts the heat, impacts your use of the HVAC system throughout the year. So I would just say, to me, that 230 is windows, ADA, restrooms, that's it.
Do you think it is helping your discussions with the city administration to point out that doing some of these things is gonna, at least in the long run, reduce energy bills? You know, like the double panes.
Sure.
Yeah, and I will say, and I think one item that was addressed, I believe, was a controller that we did, and I believe this was done last year. I have to confirm, because what happened is the timer was on an old system that was not, you couldn't use with newer laptops. You know, all these building systems, if you're using everything on a timer, like if you're at home, you know, and you've got your thermostat on a timer, this is working on a computer timer, and the computer software is not up to date. So they had to update the timer, because then otherwise you're running your HVAC system 24/7, right? Or it's can't adjust. So that's where one of the things where we had to do a single purchase, but really that single purchase just decreases your monthly use of your rate. And that was a great, I pointed one of those things out with it. It's like, in the long run, these kind of things really help you as a.
I mean, you feel like they're receptive to that kind of logic.
Right, and that's the same thing with like LED lights, like they've been going through, if you go through a lot of the stacks, they've been replacing a lot of the
Uh-huh.
halogen lights with LEDs, and that was one of my asks, was that in the long run, the amount of bulbs that you have to get, the bulbs and recycling of all the bulbs, and moving to LED, which actually are more energy efficient, and you have to replace them every 5 to 10 years versus every couple months, is the time saving, the cost saving, energy savings is all.
Yeah, good.
So, yeah, dumbwaiter, I think would be, we would put on there, but I would say, I don't know if we would list it specifically or how we would do it, and, you know, just basically say ADA, including elevator upgrades and the dumbwaiter upgrades. If we did that, that's 530, that's.
Well, it's for the physical safety of the staff in a way.
Yeah, so that's, for doors, but that's where. And there are some items here that we could also put in there for a couple of the electrical distribution panels, depending on how we want to do it. You know, so the other parts, the electrical, the switchboard, this is an immediate need, 103,000, distribution panel, 18,000. So just pointing out that some of those are also coming up, if those are ones that we want to do as part of the proposal, as doing, as you mentioned, health and safety. Open to any questions on that.
Yeah. I was not at the meeting with Kurt and Bella, but I understand from my colleagues that they were interested in the idea that you brought up about the library as a resiliency center. And if there was a way we could concoct something, a plan that would, that they were really in favor of that and would go to bat for that with the NCIP. And so if there's a way we can package this so that it,
Yeah, I just
does
want
those
to make
things.
comments.
Sure.
They talked about, presenting the library as the place for the community when there are blackouts, when there are disasters, that this is the place that people come. And so we need to be a place that's upgraded for that and allowing people to charge their phones and having, being center to that. And so if we can put it together like that, and they also talked about ADA. They said it's a good idea. We said ADA compliance, preservation of archival material and infrastructure, all under the umbrella of community resiliency. But I did have another question, which is that they seem to say that there's a big citywide proposal for the library and the sports center that's
There
being
was
submitted.
They
And
have,
so somehow those gotta be coordinated, because we really don't wanna go in there after for the same thing twice, so.
right, there's already a proposal that is citywide, it specifically for ADA improvements, and it calls out the library
So if in
as one
fact,
of the beneficiaries of it, along with the sports.
so if in fact the ADA stuff is all there, then we can factor that out and something else in.
So that proposal isn't,
I don't know who put it in,
Yeah, we don't know who.
but it's
put
already
it in
apparently
or
gone.
what.
but it's specifically for, meeting ADA standards.
Right,
And library and
Yeah, but
sports
it's a-
center were named.
They
But
only
that's
give
only
you a
because
couple
both
of
places
lines.
need that. It's not because they're trying to, somehow integrate those two,
No.
departments.
No,
Good,
it's
okay.
just that those were the places that people go,
Sure, yeah.
and
right, so
collect.
we don't know who's proposed it or
Maybe
what
save for the
exactly.
public,
in
yeah.
the
Maybe Brian
proposal.
knows.
Well, I
That's
don't know at
already
this
there.
time, but I will check with Public Works and see if I can find more back end about that, because the library and sports center were both identified during the December council meeting, December 2024 council meeting, as the priorities for the next level of who's getting ADA funding. However, there hasn't been a dollar amount advocated from the city council budget
Yeah.
for that actual work. So I don't know who actually put that forward. So I will check and see if I can find out what
And on the
exactly.
website, it does, they don't give any dollars, they just.
Right,
But
but
a really brief description of,
Yeah.
what the ask is.
And
So we don't.
I can find that out. And I will say, one piece about, and going back to trustee Moreau, your comment on, the community center, access as like community resilience center, that's one of those ideas that I proposed with them was whether, right now we have to bring in the generator, which the diesel generator, fill it up with diesel, to bring it in there, run it and hook it in. And so I had mentioned about, do you get a new upgraded generator or do you get a battery backup, like battery that connects into those systems? I don't have costs for those right now, but that's another proposal that we could identify as and work, connect with Public Works and Engineering and see, do they have a cost for what that component would be? Because I had asked them
If
before.
you're completely out of power, do you have to just lock the doors and wait until the generator gets here?
No,
So you.
No, usually if there's daylight, we have lanterns and stuff that we can use to illuminate the
Okay,
restrooms.
so it doesn't matter
And
about
so,
the.
yeah,
flags
if
or-
we were gonna be open late and it's the middle of winter, we might close when it starts getting dark
Okay.
out. But
There's no
normally if there's
natural-
daylight, there's a lot of natural light.
But if
Like,
somebody wants to charge their phone.
then we don't have the ability to.
Right,
close.
that's
So-
when
Right.
people come in
But the
for that.
restrooms are interior also.
Yeah,
There's no
and-
windows there, so you'd have to.
we rested, we put a lantern. So
You
that
did,
was one of the
okay.
pieces. So I will say,
Okay.
last year also I had a grant from Pacific Library Partnership. It was a small grant, and that's where I got the charging lockers from. What we call the Jackery boxes, which are like portable battery boxes, so that allow us to still operate at the help desks or. at
We have
the
some Jackeries, you're saying?
Yeah.
Oh.
So we have two Jackery boxes. I have solar panels. Those are small, but they really work best for the staff than they do for like a larger community, right?
Mhm.
But we have those, and we have a small Jackery box for the bookmobile as well, and outreach.
And outreach, yeah.
But those are all things that we've done that are small level, but not fully community level, right? But that allows us to still come in here, like if the power goes out and the generator has not arrived yet, what we typically do is we might rope off the nonfiction area because it's really dark in there, and the second floor, the stairs, because then you don't want somebody where it's really dark and inaccessible. And then the staff actually go and typically go and pull items. What we've done is that also for the PLP grant, which I went and bought a bunch of extra lanterns and pop-up lights and things like that, which we've used a couple of times in it. But I do think that was one piece where it was like, if we allocate, or if we look at one thing, the other side that I thought might be a good one to add in there, is access to the community room for after hours. So for example, let's say it's a Sunday and the power is out, but we're not gonna open up the full library, but you still wanna have tables and chairs and a charging ability in here. If we upgraded these doors right here on the outside, because right now you have to come in through the main area of the library. All we have to do is we have to update the alarm panel. We do an updated alarm panel, we do updated doors right here, and we can section this off. We still have restrooms, we still have this room.
The interior doors, you mean?
The interior
Or-
doors.
Or both sets?
Interior, just the interior doors. The interior door set, and then we would update these doors right here. So these doors right here, these doors here, and then an alarm panel, and that allows us for after hours use. It also allows us for after hours use of the room,
Even not in an emergency.
even not in an
Yeah,
emergency.
nice.
That's what I
That
was
seems
thinking
worthy.
too, that if we can open evening hours, and maybe there is something we can do that would be of use to the community. The whole library can be open.
Yeah, so that's where I would say my past work, my past library system, what I did is like, we used to have a lot of heat waves in the East Bay. And, you'd have days that go up past 100 degrees. And so with that, we would operate, I would operate the community center until it hit a certain temperature. And so that could be 9 PM, 10 PM, whatever it was gonna be. But because we had AC and a lot of residents did not have AC, we would open up our community room, which fit 212 people. And then would have we'd have AC, put on a movie, have snacks, water, those kind of things. And that was like just an opportunity for us to provide that service at that time.
Jackeries come in all sizes and, one of the larger ones If we were only using it to let people charge their phones during a blackout, we weren't using it to, run a refrigerator or computers or anything, it was just for that purpose. It could last a long time and serve a lot of people. In here, we wouldn't have to worry about a generator or anything, we just make it so they could plug their phones into something that goes into the Jackery.
And that's where, what the thought was before was that we could take I had before, which is the new locker systems, because that is not a big amperage draw for a system like that, or the panels we have, which are also have multi-cables. Neither of those devices generally, like, phones and devices like that, do not have a large draw, where other devices and, somebody having like an oxygen tank is going to pull a lot of amperage. So it was like, can you pull that and hook that up to the Jackery? And yes, you would be able to do that. Currently, with the two, we have the two that are, I think the number, like a 2160. It's a pretty large.
Is that 2000?
I think it's a 2000 model or something. It's about the size of like a small, like.
Yeah, I have 2 Jackeries at home, so that's why I was.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little tricky though, because a lot of people come in and they wanna like sit on their phone or sit on their iPad while it's charging. So we, when we have the outlets, the generator's on and we have the outlets available throughout the building, it's like people are finding all the weird outlets and they're all spread out so they can sit there with their electronics. And if we only had like a couple Jackery stations, people don't, wanna huddle all around one little spot. But it would be an option if we didn't have a generator.
Well, I'm just looking at there, 5 or 6 chairs right there, so you could have 5 or 6 people sitting there, and those phones get plugged into a Jackery, that's where that brown trash can is. And,
Yeah, I will say when we had some of the car outages here, we brought in, and the county helped and assist and brought in extra surge protectors, and we just set up tables and put long ones all across and did everything we could.
Right, you're talking about hundreds of people, not 5.
Yeah, so, but it was a lot, but I do think that's the side of like, if we look at I think the side for me is, one is that there's the lowest costs. I don't have the cost, because we have to get quotes on those things. It's like getting a CARB, like California Air Resources Board, CARB compliant mobile generator. That's one, because the mobile generator will work with our current electrical system. The second one is like a battery backup, but there's a battery needs solar, and I'm not tech savvy enough to know that aspect. I'd have to get somebody in there. But either one of those, I think we want to get the power, and I think that's the piece on it. But I do feel like even just adding in, replacing these doors, having another panel in here is a win-win in terms of us having access to, like, I could offer the key to somebody from the building staff or janitorial that would be able to open the library before I'm here.
You wouldn't
Close
have
it
to
in.
come lock up after Alta Joshi next week.
Yeah, exactly. So those kind of pieces like that, and then we lock that interior doors in there for the rest of the library. So people still have access to the restroom. They still have access to the rest of the library past that 6 p.m. closing time, for it. So that's where I think it's.
Because if you did that, they would need bathroom access, and so the door would be the far door.
Right, the far door would be locked in there. You could still come in here and use that. But I feel like we could use that outside of just a emergency. We could use that for a lot of different programs and usage here in the building. And that's just a few $1,000s, but I could write that in here in terms of like access to the facility.
Did you go to the council meeting on Tuesday or?
I did a remote. Yeah.
Okay. I didn't listen to it, but I heard the library was mentioned several times.
Mhm.
And is there anything new that we should know about what they're saying for sources of funding?
So I will say there's a couple pieces on there for it. Number one, they did use the number of $48 million for a new library. People did still talk about this site here, but they were identifying.
They refreshed themselves on that.
Yeah, so essentially that, then there was back forth of like, what do we actually need? Because the total amount that the city says they can actually bond, like, what's the bond cap? Like, what's the actual amount that they can lend out? I believe, I didn't write down all the numbers, but I believe it was somewhere in the neighborhood of $120 million. The city is pretty close to the max that they can actually do for sales tax. And so I think it's up to like 0.375%, which they can add, but then they have to go get approval from, I believe, the state attorney general, or state, I don't know if the comptroller, who it is, but they have to get approval to increase that, as well as go to the voters on that for the sales tax. There was talk also about increasing the TOT, and then the TOT that also goes into, if you increase that 1% or 2%, there's also a piece that then goes back into, in the current formula, into NCIP. So that increases NCIP dollars rather than just certain facility.
Do you know where we stand on that in, as compared to other, vacation destinations?
I don't,
Is our
but
rate kind of in there?
I don't exactly, but I mean, there was one of the comments on there was because if you go to Sand City and you'll see there's brand new hotels coming in, and there's new hotels going in different areas, and they were saying that the fees for these areas are, those hotels are actually gonna be higher than some of the other hotels here. I don't know. I mean, I don't really know those.
Right, because
those
they're
things.
gonna go in with the number they want.
Yeah. And there was kind of a thought of, well, if they raise the rates, people are going to be competitive on how they do those things. So I don't know I don't know enough on that side, and whether they charge TOT or what's in there. But I mean, the comment came out of like, we could price ourselves out, we could price ourselves out about for people traveling to the destination or staying in certain rooms. So there was talk on, there was things of offloading or selling buildings that they did not feel the city needed. The city is the largest property owner in the city. City of Monterey is largest than 90-something properties. There was a comment that has come up, and has come up before, in terms of does the library need to be open 6 days a week, 5 days a week, 3 days a week? And in terms of what do we do to lower our current expenditures so that we can have a bonding capacity? So I do feel that that is something that the board should be aware of and take notice of and possibly comment on, because that directly affects the main cost for going back to opening 6 to 8 p.m. The main cost for us is staffing, right? And so decreasing the number of days a week.
That's funny, they went there when we just fought for that 6th day.
So that was some of that, that was brought up at a prior meeting, and then it was some of the council brought that up. So I would just say that is something to keep in mind going forward as they're talking about that, and having honest discussions of how do we decrease costs for things here. So those are pieces for there about what was available, then also what is there $48 million needed here, or what's needed at public safety? But the library was highlighted as one of the facilities that would be coming up for renovation, if they were.
Was it coupled with the public safety?
Possibly public safety. This was just like an overarching view, and then so they're gonna come back and look at numbers and proposals and everything like that. But it did sound like that was one of the ones. The other one is, I believe, was Measure S, which is, the road, and that's coming up. And if that's going to be the same as just roads and no facility work, no facility capital improvement, then it's essentially a 50+1. It's a 51% approval because it's continuing. But if they were to change the text to include roads and facilities, then you need a supermajority. So that would be the 2/3. So that's another possibility just for facilities and roads in there. So there were some of those pieces came in there.
Did you say in the beginning of this that the thought of building a new building on this site was discussed or brought up or suggested?
It was essentially just library, $48 million, like public safety. So I think they were just looking at just like a rough estimate of.
But that would be for a new building, because that would mean tearing this historic building down and building a new one from the ground up, right?
That's from our estimates and from our discussions. So I think they're just looking at what they might be looking at square foot cost and what's there, or what other like what other areas have done for brand new public safety. And so, I mean, that's where the conversation went for several hours too. I was lying, I think, till about 11 o'clock. The numbers for, that's where it comes back to, well, is the public safety facility, like, how much can be renovated versus brand new? I mean, that's where they come back where it's like, you know, do you need 120 to 160 if your bond max is 120? And so that's where I think they want to come back and look at what's renovations versus brand new. So I think that was an estimate that was brought forward. Partially, it's just like, what does a brand new facility cost?
Was that one of the numbers on G4?
Yeah, it was one of the
highest one,
proposals,
right? It
Number
was-
4.
and,
But we didn't.
and I've always thought that we should keep and, you know, from my days on the HPC, a lot of times we would approve a modification inside a historic house, let's say, as long as they didn't screw up the outside, so it's still, and if they wanted to put a new roof on, then it had to be a historic type roof. But inside, they could change a lot of stuff, and I've suggested over and over that we retain the historic shell of this building at the least, and modify the indoors to be safer, bigger, more functional.
That was option 3, I think.
I don't remember what number it was, but so.
I think they were just looking in terms of my perspective from attending the meeting is that they are saying like, these are what estimates, this is up to what you're going to look at for these facilities. It's up to this for a new public safety, up to this for a new library. And because some of the council members are new and were not there in 2019, 2020, they may not be fully aware of the discussion of the G4 report coming from that time. So I would just take that with like, that was just kind of a larger picture of like, this is the umbrella look. And I think that's where we have to have trustees engage with this process. If they do go forward with the community process, if they do go forward, it's going to have to be the trustees, community, friends of foundation going forward and saying, this is what we expect. This is what we are looking for. This is, we agree or we don't agree. Like, how do you navigate? How are we going to navigate that going forward? Because I think those are our next steps.
Well, in terms of most immediate next steps is we have the deadline for NCIP is the end of
July.
July. So we have basically 2 months. And I understand they have offered to help with writing or
Drafting something, right?
Yes, yes,
And we're meeting with the representatives again next week.
next week.
Wednesday. Okay.
So next Wednesday, would it make sense for me to, let's see what the time is, for me to meet with, is that yourself and trustee Moreau, or is it?
Right, it wasn't going to be really a sit down,
Okay.
but it would be nice if we had something really rough outline to talk to them about. But what they wanted to specifically come back for was to get a little peek inside the archival room downstairs.
Got it. Do you remember what time that was?
2:30 on Wednesday. Yeah, and so they were just gonna meet right here at the basement because we're there and open anyway.
Yeah, okay.
And,
I'll try to be there and I think we could walk through and.
okay, yeah, because we would definitely need staff to show us in.
And I will say also just with that, there is no cost trip on this specifically because I don't have estimates, right? I don't have anything because that to me, that was another piece with like the
Right, we were just pursuing that because they seemed very interested in it. And
Exactly.
So if they like that idea, we can jump to find out how those funds could get directed there.
But
Yeah.
they also like the idea of the resilience.
It was sort of a three-pronged thing. It was, they liked ADA compliance, they liked the community resilience approach of this being a shelter for the town. And they liked making sure that we're responsibly storing the archival materials, stewarding those
Now,
treasures.
the big idea last year was around the archives.
right, and so we still have funding that's going to council for
Okay.
appropriation all that funding that the check we have. And so we'll start, that was one of the items that I shared with Melissa, that's like going forward, where we have funding for MC Gibbs for that. And so
And
one of
that wasn't a capital improvement for
No,
NCIP.
but
it
the
has to be-
capital improvement component was the humidity control. of the
Right.
Basement, so that
Right.
this stuff doesn't deteriorate.
right, and
That they specifically talked about that is to.
Which would be moving the IT out and
Yeah.
outfitting that room or moving it somewhere else that is prepared for this storage.
and for the board, what I mentioned in there was essentially that, yeah, if you go into what we call Archives 2, which is the basement, which has a lot of photos, documents, different things in there from expansion, is that the IT equipment, which IT server racks in the past 10 years have really shrunk in terms of how much space you need for all the IT equipment for a facility like this size, but they still generate heat. And heat is essentially the enemy of archival documents, heat, cold, all these different kinds of extreme weather. So that room currently contains a lot of the network equipment. So from what I understand, one of the proposals going forward from our IT department this current fiscal year is to actually upgrade all of our network cabling. And so I feel like when we do, if they're upgrading network cabling, and we get a new server rack, and then we move those outside of there, and then you do what's called like a package unit. So if you think of like you might have like a room addition, and you buy like an exterior air conditioning HVAC unit for that specific room. And so you have like an HVAC unit that's specifically, so you're not redoing the whole $2.5 million HVAC system for the building. You're buying a specific unit that's gonna be for that room with the other items out. So there is definite costs in there, but then I think that's where we could keep a lot of these items safe by doing those pieces in tandem with work that's gonna potentially happen with the IT department.
So what we need to decide today, because we're not meeting again until June, and I understand you'll be
And I
away
won't
most
be.
of June. We need to move forward on someone, as the main creator of the NCIP proposal, or two someones working with Brian.
It just, the notes that I had were the ADA upgrading the restrooms. These are the things they suggested. The humidity control in the archive room and the battery backup. Those are the things they seem most
Right,
excited.
the generator.
Yeah.
Another piece that's just good on marker room is that we talked last meeting about moving the June meeting to early July, because two of us won't be here.
Oh, I wasn't.
Yes, right, that's what I'm telling you.
Oh,
That's what
okay,
I'm telling you.
oh, I see.
So
So
we
we
can
would
talk about
not meet until July.
For-
So do
We
people
just
will
threw
be
it out
gone
there.
in
because
June,
Yes.
besides you two?
I mean,
Oh, you'll be gone too.
the end of June.
Okay,
Oh, I didn't, so Martha, you're not gonna be here in June either.
Right,
I
that's
know,
what
she's in Denmark and you're somewhere else.
yeah.
And both of you will be back by
Okay.
4th of July-ish.
well, we need to decide that, right?
Right.
Well, then,
But I'm
Yes.
sorry, I just put a marker in because we're trying to figure out what to do about the NCO.
The more
or
immediate,
fitness.
yeah, drafting.
Right.
well, let me make the decision easy. There's a decent chance that I won't be at the June meeting, because 1 week before that, I'm having orthopedic surgery, a total knee replacement.
Ah, okay.
Oh, yeah.
And that's 1 week before our June meeting. And I wouldn't begin to guarantee that I'd be available that soon. But if it's not until a little bit, just a little bit into July, I think that increases the odds of my availability,
Okay.
even if I could do it in
Because
June,
otherwise you're in Paris. you just
even
don't
by
have lunch.
Zoom.
Oh, you do that.
I'm just saying,
And then there will be
Okay,
no
so
class.
the
Wouldn't have a quorum.
process is we cancel the regular meeting and we set a special meeting for whenever.
Is that how it's
And
done?
what is the date? We need to
Why can't we have
figure
a
it
meeting
out.
of one?
What?
Why can't we have a meeting of one?
Need a quorum to.
Quorum, we
I'll vote
can
5 times.
decide it.
So
You and I can go out to eat, okay?
Well, when are Marcia and Diane gonna be back and available for a meeting?
I'm back on the first. I could do July 3rd if we went 1 week later.
That's not a good, yeah.
Okay. I don't care.
July 3rd is
I'll
what?
be back and I'm.
It's the next Thursday.
Okay. All right, same time, but on July.
The third?
Leverage doesn't like the 3rd.
yeah, I would say the problem
I
with,
said that last time too.
Well, I was,
I'm consistent.
well, I would say, okay, other than that, the other week, because if you're coming back July 1st, and then the 2nd is booked, the community room is booked because we're starting summer reading.
oh,
The other one, I mean, I would,
This is for.
the 3rd, but Horatio's not available, is
The 7th,
the 7th, which is a Monday.
that's perfect.
If we want to, because the community room is available on July 7th, if we want to look at that. And I could look, if you'd like, I could look real quick and just make sure.
So basically, we are rescheduling the June 26th meeting to July 7th.
Okay.
Yeah, and the one thing I just want to check real quick, I just want to make sure that there's no conflicting, because we have, doing everything. I want to make sure there's nothing conflicting in council chambers on that Monday. So I'm just looking at that.
Council chambers.
Council, because if we're streaming on our account, I don't think this AMP works with us in streaming the content. If they're streaming the content for here or recording the content,
Oh, I can't do
I think we could possibly do 2, but we don't want two different city meetings that are streaming at the same time.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Okay.
Well, I would just throw out that for years, I mean, pre-COVID, this board met here and there was no streaming available.
Yeah.
So I don't see why once, if need be, we couldn't just have the meeting, and if you want to talk and you're a member of the public, you come.
Yeah.
And you sit, and then we go back to like we are today in the future.
Well, we're free. I just looked at the council. I looked at the agendas, upcoming dates. July 7th is currently free.
And you're figuring that AMP could facilitate us like they are today here.
Right. So
Okay,
we'll
good.
work out the other details of that and we'll connect, but just if we want to do same time, 4 PM, July 7th, is that?
Okay.
That's great. And would we go ahead and meet on the 24th also? I'm actually
Oh.
for that.
Of July?
Yeah.
Yeah,
That becomes the July meeting.
so we get back on track and.
Yeah,
No, we're just rescheduling the June meeting a couple of weeks later.
okay. And by then, there will be some draft that we can look at? But who's going to do,
Yeah.
you guys are gone.
Well, and I would say, like, if we're meeting, the meeting next week is that, are we continuing with trustee Delormier, trustee Moreau, and myself working with that, just?
Sure, I think that's good.
Is that okay with everybody else? Or do you-
It's okay with me, but you know what? I just realized I lied. My surgery's in July, not June. There's all these pre-op
It's not the
meetings you have to
7th, is
have.
it?
No. The 7th will actually be
Still
the
works.
week before I have my knee cut in half.
Okay.
So, okay,
Okay, that's good.
we're
So,
good.
Yeah, so I guess what I'm saying is I could be here at the June meeting,
Okay,
but
but I think, we still want to do it if we.
But it'd be nicer to have all 5 of us instead of just 3.
Especially the time crunch things that we have going on.
Okay,
Yeah, I have no problem with
So
changing it. I just
Marcia-
wanted to make it clear that I could do June.
okay,
I was off a month.
okay. So
Yes,
Marcia and,
It's a
Diane?
July meeting I may not be able to make.
oh, all right,
Right.
Yes, and Diane will be the primary.
I'm her, Diane's.
Get ahead of ourselves.
All right,
Marcia will be the helper.
and, I'm willing, I know three of us can do it, but I'm willing to be editor. Because that's a strength of mine. So
Okay.
if you want an editor, I'm gonna do it. But you guys come up with the numbers and the
the general plan, and which are we going to approach? Are we gonna do the ADA? We're gonna do the.
Oh, they said to do
So,
put it
all
all,
of
they
it?
said,
Put
and they
all?
said to put it all in one.
Oh,
So,
okay.
but with line items out.
So it seems to me that it's pretty critical to find out what it is that this proposal that's already out there has, so we don't.
If there is.
Right, and I'll try to reach out, but I will say, we'll come back. We have some time, so at least we have some numbers on there. And I do feel like when our meeting next week with them, we can identify and then having some of these numbers, I think are gonna be helpful for them. So I'll put this in writing for them as well, it's just to say, this is what we're looking at, these are the packages all together here, this is what we think can go forward.
And so we've definitely decided to move the 26th of June to the 7th of July at 4
Yes.
here.
Here at the library.
Okay.
Excellent. Is there anything else we need to run with the agenda then?
Well, the only other thing I'll throw in there, as long as all of this has to do with NCIP, is that their next full committee meeting here is July 2nd.
Oh, no.
So before we would have our next full meeting.
Okay. So someone again should show up on July 2nd and say something about the library. We've been hammering away.
Yeah, Mark and I
Right.
went, and
We went,
went.
Yeah, I'll definitely
we see,
go.
get the friends, people there, or somebody.
I can get, at least somebody from.
Okay.
You bring your jet lag and you come.
But two of us, more of us can go, right? I mean,
Well, and that
it's
was the
somebody
other,
else's meeting and we're not talking our business, we're just saying, hey.
that was another
Or
thing.
is that right? Or no? We can't all be there.
I have to check, I thought you all could, basically, if you're not discussing an agendized library business topic, but if you're on there, and so you can always contact the city attorney for clarification on that stuff.
Well, yeah, they weren't, they didn't just say it was allowed, they were recommending that we have
Yes.
a whole bunch of people, because every one of them gets to speak for 3 minutes.
Aha, but I think that once we are firm on the proposal, then we can bring people in, and they suggested a student, a user.
I already have my
somebody who's not-
wish list.
Right, right.
I want a family with a child, I want someone from
A
teen
kid
advisory.
who loves life, but to be able to speak to what it is we're asking for will be really good as we move on.
And I want someone from the Herald to come and talk about taking care of their stuff.
Yeah, well, we gotta get past the CCOB part.
Separate issue. Normally, the meeting in June would be when we officialize the rotation of chair and vice chair. And if we don't have the June meeting until July 7th, and normally the new chair would take over at the end of July meeting, right? So I'm just saying that needs to be on the 7th agenda so that the new chair will be able to take on that role for the July meeting.
We'll make sure to put those in there. Thank you.
All right. Yes.
And do we have anybody online that wants to make any comments here?
We have nobody.
Okay. Well, oh, no, wait, we still have our comments and library director comments. Any trustee wants to comment on anything?
I just have a question, and that is, I heard the cafe,
Oh, yes.
proposal was approved, do you know when we can come in here and start buying food?
Not yet, we're gonna have to look at their, what's the timeline for the health permit?
Ah,
So that's something we're checking in right now, because even though they're not preparing food on site, they're still gonna have to do the
Health department.
health department
Come
have
out.
to come out and
Inspection.
So looking at the next step, but yes, that came up on the May 20th council agenda, it was approved.
yes.
Yes,
Yeah,
and so,
yes.
how long, is that like another 6 months or?
I'm hoping, I thought somebody told me it was up to 45 days, but I don't know if that's correct. But they were regular,
They're ready to roll?
I think they're pretty ready. They're working at some places around, so.
Right.
Cross our
Right.
fingers. We were hoping that we could get them in for the summer,
Yeah.
for summer reading and all of our programs. So that's our goal. Cross our fingers.
That would be nice. And we can have refreshments at our meeting.
Oh.
Or we can sell them if we have an evening program.
Any other trustees have comments, questions? Okay. Carlton, does our library director have any more to?
Yeah, just as following up on what trustee Moreau said, I'm happy we're getting that proposal for the cafe through. That would be great. Looking forward to working with Melissa and team here. I'm really excited to bring her on. It's great to have additional support in here too. It's great. And thanks for all of my team doing great work here in the library and museums. With that, also just that we'll be working with our museums commission on a proposal, possibly also for Colton Hall, an NCIP project regarding, essentially we're looking at drainage on that building. What it is that there's a lot of the hardscape around there. It's leading to deterioration of the building. It's leading to deterioration of the stonework. And I want that building to last another 175 plus years. And so with that, it's basically, there's some work on it. So crossing our fingers, that's another proposal that may be. Okay, we want to adjourn?
Do we vote? to
No,
adjourn?
just adjourn.
Meeting is adjourned.
5:36. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Recording stopped.